Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones with Veterans in Politics. We have Jesse Law, the lawman of the Republican Party. He's a chairman of the Clark County Republican Party, and he is the law.
Luau.
The law of the Republican Party. But before we get to Mr. Law, I want to thank Ron Quince for sponsoring this talk show, and Stephanie Phillips for sponsoring United. We can make a difference. Everybody see the United, right? But do you see the name, Stephanie Phillips? Okay, one of her sponsors as well. Jim, you have anything?
No, not really any rants or anything. Just it's good to be back. And I was really proud of the endorsement interview that we did
for Aaron Johnson.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was something I wanted to bring up, that we endorsed him, and it was. Yeah. And thank all the candidates for showing up.
Yeah.
We had 3 candidates out of 7 because the other 4 had a prior scheduling event.
Yeah.
So we had 3 good candidates, and we picked Aaron Johnson and Marine, Boulder City Command police officer, and really involved in his community. And we hope that he actually wins the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just like I just thought overall the way we did it really worked out really well, because we actually went in to Henderson City Council Ward 1.
In the ward. Mm-hmm.
And it was, and all 3 of the candidates, and I appreciate all 3 of them for coming in.
Yeah.
They all just said, how good of an event it was, because it's exactly, and you know what I'm going to say, Steve.
What?
When city council is what?
Where
the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, they took the time to go out in the community in a smaller environment to actually be able to reach out directly to the constituents. Right. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people running for political office need to understand. That, like, when you can get out there, well, it's called retail politicking.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best ways to go. But that's really all I had to say. I was
somebody
really
that's not going to have a rant today. You said a lot.
Yeah, but it wasn't a rant. I just had
public announcement.
I don't know how to put it anymore. Like, some people are like, "Oh, Jim says he doesn't have a rant," but then it kind of is. But it's a public, I just
people
like
make fun of you about that when you say, "Oh, I don't have a rant," and then all of a sudden you start talking.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm easy to make fun of, so that's okay with me.
Hey, and I wanted to thank all the panelists that came out and asked those tough questions. And then we had the moderator, Isaac Barone, North Las Vegas City Councilman. We had our 2 sponsors, Ron Quince and Stephanie United Phillips, right there. And what else we had? Oh, Juan's Flamin' Fajitas for holding the event.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
Yes, they did. They did. We were there for a few hours, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember back in the days we used to close the place?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Rhythm Kitchen.
Yeah, Rhythm Kitchen. Yeah, those were the days.
Were those the days? Yeah. But anyways, I have a rant, and I want to rant about attorneys and how attorneys abuse their title. And I'll give you a perfect example. James Dean Levitt. Take down those videos of me or I'll sue you. You see, only stupid people would respond to something like that. Rhonda Kennedy. Take down the videos because it's a misquote. You misquoted. And she's running for U.S. Senate. Matter of fact, she says that she's a constitutionalist, but it only applies if it's going to help her out. But if it's for somebody else, that it doesn't apply. T. Matthew Phillips, take down the video of me because I'm upset with you and you're monitorizing my facial features, and one, there is no monetizing on our YouTube channel, so that's a farce. But here's the thing, folks. Because an attorney tells you something, don't believe it. A lot of times they're just lying, especially if it's for their personal interests. If they have a bias in there or something that's going to prevent we the people from exposing their BS, don't believe it, because a lot of these attorneys that make allegations like that or try to threaten you or harass you, just write them off and put them on Yelp if they have a license to practice law in this state, which only one of the 3 attorneys actually have a license to practice law in this state, and that's James Dean Levitt. Rhonda Kennedy and T. Matthew Phillips don't have a license to practice law in this state. They have a license to practice law in the state of California. I'm not too sure about T. Matthew Phillips, though. Yeah. But anyways, I just want people, just because an attorney tries to threaten you, that doesn't mean that they are projecting the law accurately. They're just serving their own personal self-interest. So don't be scared of them. Sue them. Get your own attorney and sue their ass. But anyways, I had to get that off my chest. I wanted to get that off my chest 2 shows ago. But
feel better now?
Yeah, it didn't happen. So now it did.
Well, hopefully, T. Matthew Phillips, if we're able to monetize our YouTube channel, maybe we could buy him a new tie. Yeah,
and maybe we could get Rhonda Kennedy a pocket constitution, so she could know that the Constitution applies to everybody equally, right? Not just for her self-interest. Yeah. And James Dean Levitt, I don't know what to say about you. You stop texting me, dude. Dude, I'm not talking to you. Stop texting me. What a moron. Anyways, that's all I got to say about that. I feel like Chris Dyer today for some stupid reason. Maybe because Jesse's here.
If that's all I get blamed for tonight, that's a great night.
Mr. Law, right. Tell us about yourself.
Tell you about me.
Everybody wants.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Chairman of the Clark County Republican Party. Started in politics by showing up for the Clark County Republican Party. That was in 2007. Mm-hmm. It's because I didn't know what to do. There were visible people like Steve there. And,
that's a long time ago, though.
That's a long time ago.
Weren't you with another party before the Republican Party?
Yeah, I was a Big L libertarian for a season. Yeah. In 2006.
He said for a season.
For a season. Listen, there's seasons of shows, right? That was like the prequel, by the way. That wasn't even when the series started.
Brett Pajuns used to be my homie.
Yeah.
But since he went into the dispensary business, he don't know nobody.
Yeah. He don't know nobody. No, you'll see him at a thing, and he's like, "Oh yeah, forgot. Who are you?"
His little hair. He's doing his hair, right?
Truly, if I had hair like that, I'd be doing that too to remind everybody. I'm like, I got hair like that.
But you know what? He was. I think he ran the county Libertarian Party really good, because he was the county chairman for it, and I think he did a good job while he sat in that seat.
I got off the couch thinking, how can I help? Mm-hmm. I looked at the realities of a libertarian approach, and it wasn't there. I mean, the values were mostly good, but I'm not here for the social club aspect, because it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
And when you go to a county party, you think that when you show up, those who you're surrounded with, who've been there a while, they at least have a grasp of how to solve the problem. Right. And, I came in there pretty rough. I mean, I thought that the people that were there didn't understand the problems that we were facing in the country, because we had a Republican president at the time, willing to do these foreign wars, no accountability in those, not just for money, but also lives lost. I was offended by a lot of big government approaches from George Bush. So I'm going in a Republican Party being like, you guys don't get it. And actually, I just found out that they're people, and I started having good relationships with many of them. As time went on, I'm finding out, we need to change tactics on how to be successful. And it was because I was a member of this county party that I was immersed in it to even have a window on what to do. So that's valuable. But it was the big loss from Sharon Ingle to Harry Reid that made me go,
I remember that race.
Whatever we're doing, You can take the most hated man in politics and you spend a whole lot of money on the Republican side and still miss the mark.
You know what I told Sharon when she was in the general election against Reed? I said, Sharon, don't talk to no reporters. Don't talk to the media. Don't talk to anybody. You got this. One, leave it alone. And what do you know? Right in front of the camera. Dug that hole.
Soon as she walked outside the door at Stoney's, first thing she does is start talking. And Steve and I are both like,
that hole. It kind of reminds me of Ken Wagner. You remember Ken Wagner?
Do I?
So we're going on this Jeff Gillen show. We're at the studio over at Channel 3 or 8, 5, I forget which one. I think it was 3 or 8, one of them. And I'm walking in there because he's debating Shelley Berkeley, who's now running for mayor of Las Vegas. He's debating Shelley Berkeley, and Ken comes to me and he goes, Steve, you think I should tell Jeff Gillen about the pigs and the pig blood? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, this is how we could end the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. If you take the pig blood and you throw on the Muslims, that's like, they're like, they don't want nothing to do with it, right? Because it's make them unholy or what have you. He goes, you think I should say that? And I'm like, Ken, now you and I understand this, but we're talking to people that's supposed to be voting for you. They're not going to understand this. So don't say it. He goes, okay. So I'm sitting down and I'm next to his girlfriend, Natalie, at the time. And I think Heidi was with me. And we're watching this and we're just kicking back. And this is Ken Wagner. Well, Jeff, I know how to stop the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. If we take the pig blood and we throw it on the Iraqis and the Afghan Muslims, the war will be over. And I almost fell off my chair. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I understand what you're talking about.
Well, all of those approaches weren't working. And what that meant was it became urgent for me to figure out what works. That's it. And I was dedicated to it. I didn't want to do the normal way as a result. I mean, part of me thought that no one would accept a guy that was a Ron Pauler, not just because I was like, Jim wouldn't accept me because I'm a Ron Pauler. Just kidding. But I was like, this RNC machine of people, they're not solving the problem for Sharon Angle. So, right, it's a two-pronger. I'm an outsider. They're not doing it. What do I got to do? It becoming urgent for me meant that it was urgent for me to find that solution. And, I was doing mortgages with my brother because he owns a good mortgage company. And I've done that off and on to earn a living and all that. But that was his dream. So I'm like trying to run campaigns. And I even had some success. I learned some things that worked. And I think that the thing that bothered me the most about trying to earn a living in politics, besides the obvious, which is you're poor, is I was poor for a reason. I wasn't building my portfolio. I like at the time, I would have wanted more than 1 or 3 candidates. But if I had too many candidates, then I wouldn't be able to pay attention and help them. And then if I really wanted to earn a livable wage on something I could do for them, they can't afford it. And so it was this push and pull that really drove me into a unique place to go, that's not really what my path is, to try to earn a living that way. You can earn a living in other ways in politics, and I learned some good lessons. But anyway, it was so miserable. Sometimes I call the sides insanity. Sometimes I call the years of working in that little grassroots Republican Party stuff a decade ago rolling in the mud. You're like learning social interactions in a very extreme or heated environment. You start learning a lot about human behavior. But it got to a point for me that I wanted to leave the field. Life wasn't working too well for me. And I loved singing. And so I go into the School of Music because they don't teach rock music. They teach opera. So I'm singing opera and learning opera. And that was actually the first time in my life where I was getting a real glimpse of who I am. And it was because I was investing in myself. So that's really my love. If I had a wish to make, it would be I could unite all parts of my life and include more music because it's very fulfilling to me. But, just as you give up anything, and I did, I gave up politics the way I did, came roaring back. I loved Trump, from when he walked down the stairs. I know a lot of people say it, but our state chairman and I were the first to really go, this is Trump. He was the first RNC member to endorse Trump. And I remember talking to him about it. And, I was interviewed to work for the campaign. They turned me down in favor of somebody they knew in the same Koch brother funded organization. That's Charles Munoz, for those keeping score. Good guy. But then I worked with Don McGahn, who's the general counsel for Trump. And I did a great job for him. It was on my turf. It was for the caucus. The boss was in town. He went to some high school in Summerlin. And Don has to solve every problem, every anxiety for the pros on the staff and the president himself, the kids. Don McGahn. Apologies, I would never call her President Don. Don McGahn and I are sitting across the table from one another at the South Point, and I'm solving all his problems for him. Next thing you know, he's like, oh, this guy has some capacity. And in the fall, he had me go on to work for the campaign officially. And, we were the only ones that won a lawsuit from Hillary Clinton when I said I'd like to work in the administration or on the transition team. Our state chairman was, endorsing that behind the scenes kind of a thing. And I ended up there. So that's luck for sure, but it's preparation and timing, that process, I'm just a guy, in my case, who got off the couch in 2006 and 2007. Even ran against one of our own Republicans in a primary in CD3 in 2008. I had no business doing this, but I did it.
Who was that?
John Porter.
Oh. So Mr. Law, I've known you for what, 16, 17 years now?
I guess that would be true.
And I've seen you grow in this political windstorm that we have.
Is that true?
Yeah, and you're a charismatic speaker, by the way. Yeah, I don't give props to everybody. I was watching you speak at the Mesquite Republican Party up there, the last one.
Yeah.
And you did a really, really good job. I was impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Look, I make a lot of jokes about the dynamic of if I want to be chairman, and I'm certainly not, what doesn't really appeal to me is to be like chairman. I really like the relationship involved where there are people who are just like me, so to speak, who have this desire and this investment of time. And they're wanting to put in that time. They're coming to people who might have some authority or influence or knowledge. How can we, get active, resolve some of the problems, turn Nevada red, the whole thing. And so if I'm going to Mesquite and I'm seeing folks that have been great members of that community and from wherever they, before they retired, before they moved there, and they're looking to be involved, that's why I do chair. That's why I'm running for re-election, is that experience. And then I had some members here locally. We went over, we reviewed the 2022 election, and we tried to be as direct, honest, and even as brutal as possible, a hot wash, where you look at all the details of what went right, what went wrong. And literally, it's an invitation. Can I have, in this case, I think the first one was 52 people. And I'm like, can I have 52 of my friends come in with the express purpose of a bitch session where really that can turn into people yelling at each other? And what it was instead was, oh, thank God, we get to come here and be together. We get to focus on what a solution can be. We can talk about what went wrong. I, as a participant, can be heard. Is there anyone in the Republican Party that cares that the messaging was off, certainly as it pertains to abortion? What about the support for candidates? And it was a long list. And we've had 2 of these sessions. That reminded me what this was all for. And I said, oh yeah, that's why I do this. And, what I think our community needs the most on the Republican side is to change the focus from the infighting and fighting each other and return the focus back on to electing Republicans, beating Democrats, increasing the number of Republican voters here. And actually, we have the opportunity to do it because all of these terrible decisions, and it's not just Biden, but the Democrats aren't the Democrats you would know of 20 years ago, 10 years ago. They make extreme decisions that alienate their base all the time. And the one thing missing for those people who are alienated, it's like that line goes, let's say it was right in the middle of the beginning, you had Republican, Democrat. As these terrible decisions are made, that line moves closer to those Democrats, meaning our lion's share of voters should be getting bigger. I think that it's an opportunity that can be seized. Clark County Republican Party can at least empower folks with that kind of an outlook to take them on.
So explain to us what does life of a chairman for the Clark County Republican Party look like?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't understand, what do you do?
Yeah.
How do you make money from this? Why do you want to keep doing it? Is it profitable for you? Is it spiritual and lifted? I mean, what do you get out of it? Is it a power play? What's the life of a chairman for the Republican Party, as you know it?
It's funny to think of every one of those motives. For instance, if it were a power play, what a strange choice. Because, another choice, if that was the goal, would have been that I would have jumped on with the RNC staff, all the staffers and all that, that culture. 15 years ago, I just want to be involved. And you grow up, I'm doing an impression of myself. That's how I would have been. But then you grow up in that field. And you know what? 15 years later, you think I wouldn't have been a regional director for RNC and then this consultant guy? Of course I would have. And that would have been influential.
Yeah.
When I first started this thing, there were a lot of people being disrespected. They were being thrown out of this party. They were canceling meetings.
Yeah.
They were canceling you too.
And they canceled me. Well, prior to me announcing, I'm like, they're going to throw it at me. They're going to throw it at any person that will try to run, because they just gave it to some people that we really didn't know. I mean, they labeled them. They did a press conference. It was terrible to the brand. And I knew that would be the main focus for the year 2022, would be this giant distraction of us fighting each other. And I thought, not on my watch. And there's no one else with big shoulders, save maybe a Steve.
But everybody likes puppets, though.
Yeah.
Nobody likes anybody that's going to say no, or I don't want to do it that way. They want somebody that's going to follow the status quo.
There were interests backing not my side that, frankly, I think that they need an honest look in the mirror as to what that was about on their part. But nevertheless, I jumped in for that reason. I mean, maybe that's a hero complex. Fine. Talk about, what my frailties are later. But in that instance, it was necessary. But when I did that, I'm like, well, I kind of make money in politics sometimes. Mm-hmm. And if I make any money in politics as a county chair, people are going to scrutinize that, right or wrong, right. And like, maybe I'll have the right to do it.
Oh, but no, of course, you'd be the only person that's ever been a Clark County Republican chair that's made money.
Right. And it would be a big deal. But
not.
But I also knew that that's a headache.
But did you disclose it though, Jesse? That's an important part. Don't pull
exactly.
a John Hambrick.
Oh, I don't know those stories, but I guess you do.
Because John Hambrick, embezzlement. Anyway,
that was before my time when he was chair. But I knew that, like, look, you're a county chair and you try to make money in the field that you're accustomed to. I knew that would be scrutinized. I knew that would be negatively impacted, and I knew I wouldn't want it, because also I don't want to work with candidates, man. So I figured that I had to do this on a prayer, man. I know that I don't try to talk about things of faith for an effect. I am a human being that knows better than to trust my own compass. I require some version of prayer in order to figure out what that compass is all the time. And in this case, I was like, what's the compass? Okay, we're going to go ahead and run for chair. I know I can accomplish this thing, but God, this thing is going to impact me financially. It's not like I'm made of money. So, I take it on. I've not worked for any candidates. I haven't actually had to work in politics. I became so fortunate. And I think it was really literally by living in faith that I've been able to be successful. I I've had these strange opportunities, not, with what my professional life has kind of become. And it's not as a result of being a county chair. But, also I'm the county chair while it's happening, But yeah, so I did it for that reason then. The life of a county chairman now, take me as a personality out of it. Take whatever the party didn't do this time or did do this time. Remove all the people who don't like me out of it. There's only a few, right? But take them all out of it.
I think I got more than you do.
Well earned, my friend. You can actually throw this into another election cycle with all the different players and all the different, deficits of the county party and strengths of the county party. And the result is still the same. We need more victories in November. And without them, the base will come in March. It doesn't matter. And that's not the only reason. Don't get me wrong. But when people are coming in November and January, at the heart of the reason why any traction might be had is because we need to do more. So it's natural that there's a division.
So let me ask you a quick question. Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to interrupt, but this is a question that I've been wanting to ask. Okay, so how hard is it for you as a county party chair? You have so many candidates and political consultants that are going to rush to you in January of that election year, or even prior to that, and say, hey, Jesse, I need support from the county party. Can you give me that support? But then you're getting all that inundated. How do you how do you explain to the candidates, we'll do what we can, but ultimately it's still your campaign? Because now we didn't turn Nevada red this last election cycle. It didn't turn out the way we wanted, but it is what it is. And so many people are like, well, it's Mike McDonald's fault. It's Jesse Law's fault. How do you shoulder that, and how do you process that to try to explain to people, ultimately, we can only do what we can do. It's ultimately your campaign.
Whose fault is it?
I can tell you this, and this is true. This is a true ism. I don't care if people agree or disagree. It is always the candidate who wins or loses. It is a candidate's job to drive that victory.
Right.
And that is true. In other words, it is not my fault that there are only 50 Republican U.S. senators. Obviously. The need for more exists. When these guys are getting off the couch for the first time or had participated prior and they're seeing that more could be done, they want to come into an organization and see improvements made. Why didn't you do X, Y, Z? Because if you did, then this would have been the result. And that can be true. What generally is lost in those kinds of divisive conversations is that there's probably, I was going to say maybe an X. There is no larger critic of what I'm capable of versus what I've done. No one bigger than me. The good news about things like getting your teeth kicked in is you can choose how to deal with that. And so when you get your teeth kicked in and decide you're just going to drink, liquefied shakes the rest of your life, maybe you didn't learn anything. In my case, I wanted us to learn some serious lessons in order to have priorities. The relationship that I've had with, on a spiritual end is that there's a cause and an effect. And when we are in the valley, when we're confused, when we're lost, when we have all of that angst, and all of that angst is what you're describing, okay?
Yeah.
When we have all that angst, we're in that valley. We forget that actually, at least this is my experience with faith, is that is when the magic is actually churning. So I'm in the valley in November and December. I'm focused on my children, fortunately, in time for the good stuff. And by the,
How many kids you got?
3.
Two boys, one girl?
Yeah. Daughter turned 16 today.
Congrats.
Thank you. She's beautiful. Anyway,
Got your gun all cleaned up?
oh, I stand outside her house, just polishing stuff all the time. No. Anyway, yeah, I mean, personally, my experience, let's not pretend, my experiences, what more could have I done? Which is my lack of respect and faith for accepting what was. There were some realities that the county party faced, and I don't like to actually dig into those kinds of specifics. I don't like to get into personality conflicts because, as actually Miss United pointed out very well, as a great reminder, by the way, when you do stuff like that, all you're doing is giving into a temptation and lowering who you are. And if we want to be a respectable organization, we have to be respectable. And if our leaders choose to go the other direction, there's a problem. Nevertheless, there were realities of our organization with that split in the party, that time from July until I guess it was January of 22. I had been doing some building with some people, and then that got undermined in a very significant way. 4 months of work got turned on its head. And then we were in the middle of a primary where people are wanting to go and hang out with a specific candidate. Then we're in a general election, and it would be negligent on my part. And this was the decision I made. It wasn't like I walked around and bragged about it. It was a terrible situation. If I attempted from the time that the primary was done to build a party, A, would be unrealistic because people are focused on November. B, it would be negligent to the goal of November to say, no, let's not focus on the voter contacts. Let's focus on our party. And instead, we pushed all of our resources toward our events and pushing our candidates and voter contacts. So when people talk about what the Clark County Republican Party should have done, they're 100% right. And also, I was fed a reality that I am
Is
not
that
a fan
resolved
of.
though?
Yeah.
The other branch.
Well, it is because there was a settlement agreement signed, and we are the Clark County Republican Party. Therefore, it is resolved. It's not resolved in that there are people who are dissatisfied with what they need the election to be, and there may be some egos and stuff going.
Well, of course. Yeah.
But and that's that. Generally, by your fruits, you know them. If people are coming in with a positive solution, I want to follow a guy or girl like that. If they're coming in with, well, did you know this? You kind of know. But that is resolved. So when I was talking about the Valley of November, and I love being dramatic. Don't let me not be. Like, I need it. By the time we get to January, it was urgent to everybody in the room. We actually had a really rough experience of a meeting at Stoney's. But it was clearly urgent to everybody that we get our butts in gear. And then now we're building off of it.
Speaking of that, I need to ask you, what's your favorite amendment in the United States Constitution?
Well, it would be the Second Amendment.
Okay.
For obvious reasons.
Okay. Because this thing with Stoney's and when Michelle Fury did her speech, which I loved, by the way, 2-shot panty drop. I mean, real, right to the point, specific. Yeah. And this is a free country, and we're Republicans, and you believe in the Constitution, the right for free speech, right? Why they were trying to ban not taking photography and cameras? I mean, doesn't the Republican platform say the right for free press? And I know Stoney's is a private building, private people own it. But the Republican Party is supposed to be a party of what? A party of what?
Oh, we got to be transparent. We got to have free speech. We got to have
inclusion,
inclusion and welcoming people. I mean,
okay.
So what was up with that?
You know what? I think my favorite approach to things is talk about what were all the factors, and then maybe people can see that you have to have a logical approach to things in order to try to resolve it.
Sure.
And when I'm making decisions, I have to be making decisions on what's in the best interest of an organization. That's my job as chairman, which means I sometimes have to do things.
I like to know what the chairman's job description is.
Well, we talked about what's the day of in the life of the chairman, and I didn't get to tell you the best part. I get to make my own schedule. I get to meet really neat people. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, because it's a volunteer organization.
Free meals.
Yeah, free meals actually is a good one. It is a volunteer position, just so we're clear. But
How many hours do you put in?
well, it depends on the week. If it was the week of Christmas, forget it. In the last 7 days,
It's election week, right before the primary.
yeah.
How many hours?
Oh, right before the primary. I was at least 5 hours a day. Like, so what is that? 35 hours,
Okay.
something like that. But I mean, in the last week, I've done 10-hour days. 3 of the days.
Mhm.
So because it's building, we're doing a building
Right.
process. But look, let me at least talk about the factors of the recording situation, because the factors are important. And the first one everyone should know is that I am repulsed at the thought of turning off any cameras, like to the point where I have an angry reaction at the thought. Me. And what I was facing was when, I guess it was a September meeting, some people got to the microphone. There was discussion about Republicans using the Republican Party brand to endorse Democrats. In other words, saying, hi, I'm a Republican, therefore other Republicans, you should listen to me, Republican. I'm going to support this Democrat.
Yeah.
That has got to stop. It was Republicans for Reed, and now we're doing this. Well, people got to the microphone, and they spoke inefficiently, but it was political speech, okay? It's an open meeting. It was political speech. Nevertheless, they're sued. And they're sued by, these are Republicans suing Republicans. So the person that was accused, or people that were accused of this, they hired whomever they hired, but the person who's litigating it is the head Democrat attorney for the state. So Mark Elias is national. This guy is the head Democrat attorney. He's representing these Republicans who were endorsing Democrats against our Republicans. So now I have up to, what is this, $30,000 in legal bills right now just for that one event. I go into the next event. I have some people who come in who clearly were looking for a problem to cause. They didn't have to go far. Michelle got the microphone and decided to say what she wanted to say.
Yeah.
And no, she needs to apologize to everybody and me. But
Did you tell her that?
I did.
Yeah.
And what was her response?
That's between me and Michelle.
Yeah. I can about imagine.
But nevertheless, so when that happens, now we have our meetings being fuel for the Democrat radio hosts,
Right.
bad headlines. In fact, it's like being used as a weapon to harm our organization.
Right.
And we're doing it. Now, another factor that exists is that the other party would not want to do this. And if we were accomplishing neat things as an organization at our business meeting, and we're talking about strategy, how much money we have in the bank, how it was spent or anything, now we're giving our playbook. If we're yelling at each other or being not, disrespectful or not respectable, now we're on display as something that no one really wants to be a part of, because it would turn me away if I wasn't me. Like, I don't want to go where people are yelling at each other. That's not fun at all. Okay, that's not beating the Democrats at all.
And to be perfectly honest with you, Jesse, that's one of the reasons why I don't go to a lot of CCRP meetings, because I'm like, all right, and I'm not gonna put anyone's name out there. But there's certain people that, like, no matter what meeting I go to, I guarantee I know who's going to stand up and start screaming and yelling about this. And I'm like, I've known you since 2007, and we're still arguing about the same stuff.
Jim, you know what was beautiful?
It's so frustrating. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up to you, too, is, like, so since we didn't turn Nevada red this election cycle, now all of a sudden people are like, hey, what we need to do is we need a new chairman of the CCRP. And I'm like, really? Now, I'm a huge sports fan. I'm like, so you're just going to keep, if your team is not doing well, okay, you're just going to keep picking a new quarterback every year or a new head coach every year. Like, that's not going to fix the problem. So for me, I'm a huge supporter of yours. And I think you've done, I think you've made some really good progress with the CCRP. But now I have people coming to me saying, oh, we need a new CCRP chairman. I'm like, no, Jesse's only been in this role a couple of years. Like, I've been around long enough to know, like, you don't change that culture in 2 years. So what's your plan to get people like me that are really interested in politics back to these meetings and stop all this stupid arguing? Like, everybody has the freedom to say what they want.
Sure.
But
Well, I mean, it's a couple things, but I want to make sure I know. Do you want me to jump into that? Because there's a little bit more to say on the camera stuff, like important stuff, right? Like, so people know. Because I haven't even said what the next
Finish
position
up the cameras.
yeah, sorry.
And then,
Oh, Jesse, can you just bump
it's
your
lights
mic
down?
up? Yeah.
Must be.
Okay, there you
It's
go.
All right.
silk. That's probably a silk tie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stefano.
Oh.
Okay, it's a lucky tie. Just to quickly finish up on the cameras. I
Yeah,
was trying to
sorry
show
about
that those. No, it's
No.
quite all right. What you're asking is critical.
Yeah.
On the camera front, all of that was swirling. I'm offended at the notion that we would need to stop the filming, and also we're facing this because there are real lawsuits happening where even the host of us is like getting negative publicity in the media.
Yeah.
And by the way, the deal that they do for us is so generous that normally the money we normally spend on something like that might be $1,800, $2,000 a meeting.
Yeah.
And what we get from them, oh my gosh, like it is so generous. And now we're dragging them through the mud. And what had actually happened was that I'm over here going, dude, I'm not banning any, I can't, like, you gotta respect the members. You gotta like go through a process, But then I'm finding out that the venue itself has concern over the bad press. They're letting us be there. And I'm like, are we gonna, have people foot the bill for another venue? And we're gonna come up with $2,000 a meeting? And there was a communication disconnect where I had, the conversation was had with the leadership at Stoney's where they were like hoping we would not want to film. And it was taken as don't film. And then they're like hearing us go, oh yeah, we don't want. So like, it's almost like a sigh of relief on my part. I didn't have the conversation, but when I heard that Stoney's doesn't want it, I sighed with relief because I actually don't want all of these problems. So what did I do wrong? And I'm gonna put it on my shoulders. I mean, the buck stops with me. Mm-hmm. I see that the stuff's being set up. I think it's a little suspect that we're setting it up, alongside the venue. Like I didn't really know. I didn't have time to really talk about it. I see my friend Chris run out. I'm like, hey, man. Kicked out. And I text him later to apologize and call. Dude doesn't call back. But like I should have grabbed the reins on what all the truth was that was happening. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, there's all these like people coming here. I can see it. They're like ready for a fight. And I think there was something in the air that night. Like everyone was ready. And you know what I should have done? I should have been way more decisive and been like, no. So I messed up on that.
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know what happened with the Ahern venue, but I kind of liked Ahern. It was closer.
Yeah.
Shit's real close to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It was closer. You didn't have to go through all that traffic all the way down there.
Yeah.
We just had an event a week and a half ago there that was pretty positive. I spoke to their facilities president and, I said, I miss coming here. I miss you coming here. I'm not saying it's happening.
Are we going back there?
No, I've not had any discussions, but I'm not saying that Stoney said don't film. I have to resolve all of that, and I also have to be compliant with the rules. But frankly, our members need to have some maturity about the situation too. Do we want to equip our enemies? And that includes with how we behave toward each other, all right, with or without a camera. But if we're going to put the cameras up and we're going to have bad behavior, is that really what we're fighting for? And I actually don't like the argument about it being like a lack of transparency. Why? Because it is an open meeting and everyone is allowed. And if we can maybe even find a hybrid as a group where we turn it on during certain times, or we regulate it so that we're not broadcasting stuff that's like our secret plans for politics.
Wasn't these meetings live before?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't see the difference. And let me tell you about the Ahern. The only thing I don't like about Ahern is when they don't allow us to exercise our right to bear arms.
And I agree.
And that's a Republican right? I mean, that's an
It is.
American
But
right,
let's
right?
let's be clear.
But the only thing I don't like is that part, because what happens if something go down, right? Because if I'm a bad guy, you think I'm gonna pay attention to that damn sign? If I came in there with the purpose of harming people, you think that sign is gonna say, "Oops, I better go put this shit in the car"?
Yes.
No, it's not gonna do it.
It's not.
No,
Oh.
not at all. So all that sign does, you hear me, Don? All that sign does is to tell law-abiding people to put your weapons in the car and tell criminals,
Let me defend
everybody
Don.
here is unarmed except for the security. So, hey, you take a look at that security guy. You take a look at the security guy. Everybody else is
Stevie,
unarmed.
I'm going to defend Don because, first of all, he was a great host to our
I'm not
organization.
saying that he's not.
Let's talk about the realities of insurance when there's alcohol involved. For instance, we can't carry at Stoney's, and people have a real problem with it, as they should. And the reality
Stoney's
is,
don't have a sign.
well, but they don't allow it because they are under a blanket policy for insurance at the mall. They serve alcohol.
Mhm.
It is just what it is, right?
Mhm.
And do I want it to be better? Yes. What would it cost for us to find a venue who would allow us to exercise that?
Silverton, the same thing.
Mhm.
No weapons allowed.
And they do that because they have a master policy for insurance, and I guarantee it's because, especially with the Silverton, there's actually gaming there.
But we all know that only applies to law-abiding citizens. They're
Sure.
the only ones that's going to put their
Sure.
weapons away. A criminal is not. If I had my intention to come in there and put a cap in you, Jesse, you think I'm going to pay attention to that sign that says "Don't bring a gun"?
I agree, but when we argue it on that terms, we also need to at least defer to the fact that these guys have to keep their insurance policy. And I'm not liking the way insurance is set up. Are you kidding? We need to roll back a whole lot of things, including how terrible insurance has gotten, medical and otherwise. But nevertheless, that's a reality. So an easy solution, so we're not embarrassing our host, is to also, and this is to your point on the division, to be a respectable organization. Now, my experience in January, you were there?
Probably.
Yeah, you were there for a minute.
Yeah. I go
Folks
and
were
show
heated.
up and then I leave.
My attitude from that was, because actually I was kind of impressed. I'm a heatable arguer. I can get upset. You can usually tell I'll get a little tension. The voice starts rising.
Like
One
the
of
last
those guys.
show we did.
Yeah, that probably happened. And that one, like I had a prayer in the meeting. Well, this isn't my battle and it's not my victory. And it really gave me some peace. And I was just sort of like, I was comparing myself to Muhammad Ali. I was like, oh my gosh, they're yelling at me. I don't even care. And that's not like me. And that was really great. But that also taught me after the fact, we're not allowed to take a bite out of each other.
Mhm.
You're not taking a bite out of me.
Mhm.
All questions are allowed.
Mhm.
Debate is allowed.
Mhm.
Accusations, vitriol, and taking a bite out of me or anybody else is not allowed. That is something that you have to do with an intention. And now I have it because I'm like, enough's enough. But it was a shame that you didn't know that even up until September, it was a love fest at these meetings. We didn't have any of that animosity for a very long time. The animosity came with people with agendas who decided to come in November, January. That's what happened. If we want our organization to avoid those kinds of pitfalls, we focus on being respectable.
Yeah.
Also, as a leader, I have to focus on what the real prize is, which is increasing the amount of Republican votes so that we are victorious. If we as an organization only focus on those things, that's what we exist for.
Well, and then so in some of those meetings, I've talked with people about it. I'm like, it's okay to voice your opinion, but you also got to remember that there's some professional decorum that also comes along with it. So it's not just I show up once every 2 months just to scream and yell at Jesse Law or whoever the chairman is and complain about we need to change this bylaw, change that bylaw. The one thing that I always find interesting is everybody seems to know how to do your job, but you. that makes any sense.
It does, actually.
So how does that
There's a whole lot of questions for me. Okay.
So you're running but I mean, and I mean that honestly.
No, I know.
It is because it's like you're explaining a lot of stuff about what it takes to have these venues and licensing and all this other stuff. Like, a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah.
They don't understand that there's a lot more involved
Yeah.
than just
Listen,
what they think it is.
First of all, that venue is a relationship-based solution.
Yeah.
The same with Ahern.
Yeah.
In the wrong scenario, we alienate our host. We got to find somebody from scratch. And next thing you know, we're digging in deep into our pockets every time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a detriment. That's money that we have to spend on other things.
Mm-hmm.
And like my job is first to do what is best for the organization, and then act with an example, which means I can't get into the personality issue. Right. I can't. Yeah. Not because somebody told me, because those are things that are bad. They teach other people how to behave. Yeah. And, to your point, it was nice of you to say that you do support me. It was nice of you to say that you got to give them a chance. And frankly, if I was in litigation from July 21 until June 22, holy smokes, did I get a full 2 years? That's kind of rotten, right? But like what I was saying, when over the Christmas break, when I was trying to struggle on what the direction is that we should do, and then we get into January and we hosted the whole group of people for that hot wash. What happens pretty naturally in a cycle is that we want to lick our wounds after some losses in November, and then we get started after the first of the year. Pretty natural stuff. And for the next 12 months, what we have building is actually really exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's like Field of Dreams, build it, they will come, kind of good stuff. A lot of it very straightforward, things that you would expect or take for granted that they should be there. Yeah. But, when that party fell apart and I took it over, all institutional knowledge was decimated. The party was split, the volunteers were gone, the whole thing. Yeah. And so we are installing really great committees. I've got new people coming in. I've got some of the folks who've been here a second coming in order to man them. And what I want out of this, because I was meeting with a guy who was a candidate, earlier today for coffee. And I'm like, well, if you come in and you decide that it isn't me that you would want to have be your chairman, I would hope that what we've at least built is something you can be proud of, something you can participate in, something that empowers you to accomplish your goal. I want to have an organization that people want to be a part of.
Are you guys going to be doing pre-endorsements again before primary?
You mean like the state did?
Yeah.
Well, I always distance myself from it. I don't think that's right. As a leader of an organization, I certainly was not involved. Mm-hmm. And frankly, looking at how bad it was, I had wisdom about the matter and I didn't have like a specific role. I probably should have inserted myself. There's some things that were not wise. I think the value of a party could, and this is about building a bench. This is about making sure that like resources aren't wasted. Yeah. But that requires leverage, my man. I can't prevent people from signing up to just run for something. Mm-hmm. And if somebody wants to, believe that the Clark County Republican Party's endorsement matters, it's great to say you're endorsed by the Republican Party. Full stop. It is great. But if there's baggage on the reputation, if you can't even afford to communicate that has happened, mm-hmm. So I think that there are a lot of steps there. And if we become an organization that has more leverage, I think it's something that would be natural. And it would have to be done very strategically. And I do not think that that's a place that we're going to be next year. And also, I'm proven wrong all the time.
How is the party getting walk lists and phone lists to the candidates? Because candidates were complaining that some candidates got them right away and other candidates didn't. Is there some type of bias reason why one candidate would get it so quickly and another candidate will take months?
Could be.
I don't know. In my experience, all I did was go and I got those walk lists right away.
Well, so it's different. The 22 cycle, I saw professional staff reduced from the 20 cycle. That's kind of normal. Now they're having to allocate their time, and it was insufficient. So I send dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers all the time. And the staff was overwhelmed. They could only teach them how to use the app, so to speak. Here's your lit. Here's kind of what to say. Bye. Now that's a failure. And these are nice people. And that was part of the hot wash discussion, which was really great to hear him talk about it. And I was surprised at how I was wrong about certain things that happened or assumptions about what works. It was really great to hear. But what I found was, the RNC staff, as the only guys and girls who are the trainers and give the materials, and then the volunteer knew and everything, they come into that RNC person is not going to give that volunteer what they need. And so we're building a precinct organization. We have training material. We have a nice structure, but it's the heart and soul of everything we're doing for the next 12 months. Because here's the truth. There are 758 precincts in our county with double-digit voters, all the way up to a couple thousand. And if you look at, say, let's pick on Adam Laxalt's race. If he lost by about 9,000, using some nice round numbers. And we had a precinct organization this time that A, was ballot harvesting, B, turning out people who were supposed to show up that had not yet. In other words, a nice little list to each person in that precinct. And C, that they were looking at people who are registered Republican but don't ever vote. And I said, gosh, Sally and Jim and 400 other precincts, you're tasked with 25 voters in the ballot harvest, never shows up to vote and should be showing up to vote category. That would have been 9,000 votes. That's the infrastructure. And that's quantifiable. That's imaginable to these volunteers. If I make it mysterious, knock every door in your neighborhood, they're going to stop in an hour and never do it again, right? And these are people who care because they're coming to the training, right? But I can't have it be a mysterious answer. I think it's quantifiable that we do a precinct structure that way. In terms of directly answering how the lists come out, when you get, and this is a point of contention, so I'm familiar why anyone would have dissatisfaction. Any and all list services always check their data against the Clark County Election Department. That is the fountain of knowledge, right? Who's registered? And that is also based on people, and I know this because I did this with Trump, people who moved, people who are deceased, wrong phone numbers every time, and so it's highly inaccurate. And then it arrives on an app and somebody who's barely trained or very trained, and they're seeing and they're dissatisfied. Oh my gosh, I'm reaching, all the doors that open, 2/3 are accurate, and this is a good day, right?
Do you have any aspirations of running for state party chair?
No, and no, and yes. I mean, let's be real. Like, where I'm at as a human being.
They say don't ask questions unless you already know the answer in politics, right?
Oh yeah, are you a mind reader? We've never talked about this big boy.
I don't know. He's pretty close. Because sometimes when I call him, I'm like, oh, no, nothing really. He's like, nah, Jim, you don't just call me out of the blue if there's not something going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve, you're actually a good guy to call randomly.
Is that like a positive or a negative?
It's positive.
Okay.
Yeah. No, an aspiration to go be state party chair. I have my own spin on what success can be, I enjoy connecting people. But as a human being, I'm not a guy currently, heaven help me I say this way, that trusts his own will. It doesn't mean I don't do it all the time.
Right.
But through grace, I actually try to do other will. And I don't mean to sound pious, I swear. But I do like advertising that in terms of an ambition, whether that was like an elected seat in the county or a legislator or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I could see why it would appeal to me, but I don't want to do things without purpose. And I really like focus on that. But I mean, our state chairman, he's there. He's long serving for the national. What Michael does extremely well, and it's unsung. Like the gentleman that passed away in Pahrump today, Kenny Bent, good guy, always smiling. He was murdered, tragic shot, Pahrump.
Of all places.
Everyone else is armed. Like, what happened? But like Kenny, it reminded me, because speaking to Michael about it, I see the news from Michael I call. I'm like, man, he was the guy that always smiled. And then I heard our state chairman like talk about Kenny and the members there. And it reminded me, this is a guy that really likes to back up his base. He's a voice for the conservatives. He never gets any credit for this. But the other thing that I think he does really well that people should know, national resources, being able to sway the RNC. As a long-serving member at the RNC, he's very charismatic. He knows the score. And it's the reason we get the amount of resources that we do. And frankly, when you brought up earlier, like, well, we should blame Jesse and we should blame Michael. Every time I've heard someone blame Michael, they forget.
Kind of did.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But not in a mean way.
It's not it's like, well, why?
Because I love Mike McDonald. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a long time.
It's a valid question.
But at the end of the day, we didn't pick up any more state Senate seats or any more state assembly seats. It stayed exactly the same.
And it's a valid question.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys like Michael and myself are the most visible on who's supposed to be responsible for success in the election.
Yeah.
And we're just the front line. But the truth is that doesn't ever get said is the money from national that Michael's really good at securing is also decided on with how it is spent by those who are the consultants that national has agreed to have. And so all of those strategies with those resources are spent by the guys who are running all these campaigns.
Well, we're running short on time. We have another guest sitting outside, but I have to ask this one question because it was brought to me, and
Sure.
It's brought to me. I got to ask. And earlier you talked about you had an event at Ahern.
Yeah.
And but before I ask the question, are these meetings open to the public?
That one in particular was a private event for the person who was the speaker. Okay. And I just promoted that it was happening.
Okay, because the reason why I'm bringing that up, because I got a call from your buddy, Brian.
Well, now he's my buddy. I didn't even know him.
Talking about how he got booted out of this event that was open to the public.
It was not open to the public. It said open to Republicans.
Oh,
but anyway.
Probably he didn't read the fine print.
He did. So, and look, the facts as I remember them, Brian had not been there doing anything, But also, it was brought to my attention that he has a long history of setup and gotcha.
Oh.
He has worked very diligently to embarrass a whole lot of our candidates. And I'm like, God bless the person that thinks that going on there is a great idea. I mean, that's his shtick. So then he's excited about coming to this event. And he was respectful to me. He texted, hey, I want to go. Great, sign up. Well, then I get a call. Why is this guy going? I'm like, I don't know. Well, I show up at the event. He needs to go because what we didn't want was a guy who's a left-leaning radio host who also goes after anybody that talks about election integrity, embarrasses every Republican possible. And he was there for material for his show. Mm-hmm. And for him to act sanctimonious is silly, and everyone knows it's silly. Mm-hmm. And that's fine if we want to treat it like entertainment, but why don't we just be adults and call it what it was? He was there for material. Mm-hmm. I just did the job of look, this guy's here to talk to our members, which is a nice service for them because we want our members to have exposure, what's happening. Mm-hmm. And the dude wanted to be there as a distraction and to cause a harm to that event, which I take it as harm to my members, harm to my organization. Mm-hmm. Fine. You guys don't want to, I'm not going to embarrass, anybody. I'll just go do it. I'll be nice. And, he gets out his phone. And I'm thinking but since that time, I'm like, oh, Brian must have been thinking I didn't know he had the phone the whole time. I knew he had the phone. He's like, well, so, and that's not him. I did that. He didn't physically act like that. That's what I'm doing. But it was kind of like that. It was a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, and he's like,
I can see him doing it though.
Sure. He's like, well, so who's asking? And I'm like, it's not my event. I'm sorry. Right. And at some point I have to go, this isn't a discussion. And I think he played it all. So if y'all listen to it, great. I think I did an okay job just being like even keel, like, hey man, this is
I
a
heard
discussion.
the audio/video.
Was it good?
Nice shoes you have, though.
Thank you. Was that the comment? Because I was wearing my
No,
lubes.
because it was pointed down on
Oh,
your.
was it? It's Christian Louboutin, of course.
But
Anyway, I didn't like that he had to have that interaction.
Right.
But honestly, like that's kind of my job, everybody. And
Gotcha.
it's the same with the video thing at Stoney's. It is my job to address the reality that it embarrasses us. Do I want us to ban a single video? No. We also should behave ourselves.
so
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
so you're gonna run for re-election. When
I
is
am.
that?
Yeah, July.
This July.
Yeah.
All right.
So, you know,
Jim Jonas says he's gonna throw his hat in there.
could you? Well, what I need is I need.
Oh, there's no way I want to hear God.
No, you don't.
No, and I have a ton of reason.
Jim wants to get paid.
No,
Yeah.
I have.
Well,
a
then
ton
definitely
of
don't
reason.
run. Don't
Trust me, and I want everybody who's watching and everybody who's listening. I do. I can't say I always agreed with you on everything over the years, but I'll tell you, anytime I called you up, you always gave me advice. Met, we had coffee together.
But there was one particular time Jim actually wanted this position
Yeah.
when he ran against Richard Scotty and Dave McGowan bowed out, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to bring that up. Yeah,
so-
Jesse was there.
yeah, and Jim buried himself, didn't he?
Didn't I vote
Did he
for
bury
you?
himself?
You,
I think I voted
You were
for
there.
You did, but
If the
I
Paul
remember-
crew
Didn't
was
he-
voting for somebody, it was you.
Did he bury himself?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get all you corrupt people out of here. I'm like, Jim, shut up.
And
I've
I'm-
seen
I'm
it
tired
before.
of
There's
the-
this
and
funny
I'm-
thing
and
where you're
I'm
like,
tired of
all
the-
right, vote for me.
I'm tired of the quid pro quo and all this
I'm
crap.
like, Jim, shut the
And
hell
I'm
up,
looking
dude.
over-
Let them vote first, and then you go
And
say
poor
that.
Scotty's like, what quid pro quo? I just want to lead the group.
Richard Scotty said, "Thank you, Jim Jonas. You just got me elected."
Yeah.
Richard Scotty's just like, and like, I'm like, okay, how am I going to run against Richard Scotty? Because he's a good friend of mine. And then, I'm looking over and everybody's just going, looking at me. I'm like, well, I already dug the hole. Might as well just keep digging.
Well,
And I just kept going.
Let me just shameless plug as we're wrapping, and thanks for the chance to talk. I mean, it's actually a pleasure because we kind of get real about
Right.
Yeah.
But I do coffee as often as possible, where like I do an open invite, send out to the membership. Like tomorrow, for instance, I'm in South Henderson at Hawaii Coffee, HI Coffee on Stephanie, 9:30 to 10:30. I can't next week. I get the opportunity to go to Mar-a-Lago. I'm meeting with the president on March
cool.
2nd.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is he gonna endorse you for the second round?
I think, but I'm not going to say he is.
He's gonna get a letter from him.
Listen, I mean, he's busy. No, but this is a chance because all of his professional staff, I need them to think about Nevada a certain way.
Right.
They need to know about Clark County a certain way.
Is the National Republican when they do the presidential stuff, is that going to be coming here? Because I hear rumor that it might.
Like debates, or you mean the convention? Or
Yeah, the convention.
we would have to do that for 28.
So it's not going to happen.
Not 24.
I
that's
thought
the
it was
benefit
going to
of-
happen in 24.
Yeah, that's the benefit of having Michael, but we have some work to do. We need to flip a couple seats on the county commission. We do.
Well,
Or
good luck
couple
with that
three.
because it's been D for a long time. It's
Yeah,
been D
well.
since Chip Maxfield,
Yeah,
right?
well, make my mouth water. I mean,
It's
we've
been
got-
D since Chip
We've got a
Maxfield. How
couple
long has that
districts
been?
up. We got a couple
Yeah.
districts up that look really good, and that's the if as an organization we're building and not fighting. Guess what we get to do?
Yeah.
We get to change that trajectory. But then also March 21 at Stoney's is our next general meeting. So I would ask that you could attend. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And anybody registered Republican, come on out. And I want to be the kind of organization that can talk about those ideas. We have regular meetings at our office to organize it. So you can participate in those and actually help
All right,
shape it.
I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. Well, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah.
And I would keep going if we didn't have another guest.
Yeah.
Believe me.
I was going to say, we could talk all day.
But
Oh my Lord.
Mark is going to zoom in on you, and I don't know if you want to reach out to people that may be thinking about switching over to the Republican,
Sure.
or libertarians, or independent Americans, or what have you, or reach out to Republicans thinking about leaving the party,
Sure.
or reach out to minorities you want to bring into the party,
Sure.
because there's a lot of minorities that really want to be Republican, but they just don't know how.
Right.
because of, who they're living with, their upbringing, their family members, or they just don't know how to separate themselves and say, hell, I'm going to become a Republican or a conservative, whatever the case might be.
Sure.
Or they are, but they say, okay, I want to join
Sure.
the party or whatever the case might be.
Okay.
And then your point of contact, and maybe you want to let people know when the next meeting is and get
Sure.
everybody to show up there.
That'd be great. So I'm a father. I've got a wide range of folks in my family of different viewpoints. And, I've had to earn a living and figure out how to earn a living and make ends meet. I think what we have in common as a bunch of citizens is that we need to define a political organization, not let it define us, so that we can actually have access to our officials, have some accountability there. Because when things are going haywire and we don't have any kind of a voice, that's when our society begins to go backward. We've got a really great country. We have a really great community in Las Vegas, a great, great community. I love our neighbors. I love the way we are here. We like to do our thing, be left alone. And frankly, when it comes to, the way the uniparty, meaning the other party, when they take on the issues that matter the most, there's no accountability for those bad decisions. They're closing businesses. As you remember, our children aren't getting educated. When you come to the Republican Party, you're joining a group of people who are just like you, seeking answers. And we are all colors of the rainbow, all walks of life, and we have union members, and we celebrate all of it. And what I hope that we have in our Clark County organization is our neighbors in Las Vegas getting together, getting empowered to contact one another so that we can elect the kinds of officials that will be accountable to us, listen to us, and then we're closer to those decision making. And I think opportunities do exist, like we were talking about with the county commission. But even so, if you can come to the Clark County Republican Party's meeting in March, that's March 21, we're doing it at Stoney's. We'll help you register to vote Republican right that night, or you can go to ClarkCountyRepublicanParty.com. You can actually sign up to join and be a member. You'll start getting our emails, and we'll remind you, go to Stoney's on March 21st. And it is like a family environment. Sometimes families don't get along too well, but this group of people care deeply about the matters that have been harming our community and how to resolve it. And we want you to join us. So I hope that you do, and I hope that I can see you there.
Oh, thank you so much, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Folks, that's Jesse Law. He is the Clark County Republican Party chairman, and he's going to run again in July. And I think he's been doing a great job, although there's some people that might not, but everybody's entitled to their own personal opinion. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones of Veterans in Politics. Until next time.